was truth in journalism, where brave men and women gave voice to the voiceless. But then the corporations bought the journalist, poisoning the news that we are fed. With those tainted sources, all we ever ate was a steady diet of status quo. This hijacked narrative hid the truth of mass suffering, injustice and corruption throughout our land. Status quo, status quo, status quo, status quo. To expose this shift to oligarchy came a band of honest journalists. They left the studio and hit the streets to give the microphone back to the people. From sea to sea, the people were empowered to share their truth. Their voices no longer stifled, reclaimed their power.
there, Jordan Sheridan live on Monday, February 24th, 2020. Let me make myself a little smaller here. Hold on, farewell, we've come to see you go. That'll do. I have good news. I have signed a lease for a new apartment, so I'll be moving in there in a week or two. So until then, I'm still in a very, very poorly lit studio, but my voice hopefully works for you, and I am really, really happy to be back on the air. Unfortunately, came down with a really, really bad cold that kind of kept me in bed for a couple days, but I am back at it now. And I am so appreciative to Status Coup co-founder and president Jen Dyes, who not only filled in for me, but damn, Jen kicked some ass out in Nevada for Status Coup. She was absolutely wonderful, didn't skip a beat. And, her and I are talking about her going out there and covering more of these contests. So you'll be seeing her face a whole lot more. So thank you for your support. It's great to know that we have another really talented, aggressive, progressive journalist like Jen who can get out there along with me, because I've said it from the beginning. Status Coup is going to have to be a lot more than I. If we're going to really give the microphone back to the people and have a coup d'etat of the status quo. So thank you to Jen, Jamal, who is out there too. And I am headed to South Carolina tomorrow with Jamal. And we're going to get into South Carolina because we got a lot to get into. So much news to get into. So thank you. Thank you, Seth Peterson, getting us started. Thank you, as always, Seth. You're so generous constantly. It's contributions like you that are helping us get out into the field on the campaign trail and staying out in the field on the campaign trail. It's $65 from Seth in the Super Chat, with outlets like Status Coup, who do real journalism and give regular people voices that are never heard of in the mainstream media. The revolution will keep growing. So glad to see you back, Jordan. Thanks, Jen and Jamal, for your work in Nevada. Yes, I echo that. And thank you. We are now at, I don't have a fancy graphic because Colin is flying right now. He usually does my graphics. But we are now at 1,533. 1,533 Status Coup members. So we met our goal of 1,500 members in Nevada. That is the number we needed to reach to get to South Carolina. So now it's onward. We still need to grow because the way it's looking, in a good way, this is going to be a long campaign and a lot of primaries, a lot of states to cover. We still need to grow our membership by quite a lot. So we are now 1,533. So we are now just 67 members away from 1,600. So if you're not a Status Coup member yet, consider signing up right there, statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 a month. This is how you grow an independent media revolution that takes no money from banks, that takes no money from fossil fuckers, that takes no money from big real estate, big pharma, big fossil fuels, Silicon Valley, the plutocrats funding the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. We don't take their money. We don't want their money. Let's keep going. Sign up today, statuscoup.com/join. So obviously there's a lot of political news to get to. Thank you, Jose, $14.99, Latinos for Tio Bernie. Thank you. And we're going to get to Nevada and everything. I actually want to start out not with the campaign. We're going to get to the campaign, but as a journalist, I think I have to start with the disgraceful thing going on in the UK right now and Julian Assange. So bear with me as I update you on what is going on there. Thank you, SFA, $5. Hi, Jordan. Can progressives start a preemptive movement to oust Perez, scare the establishment away from stealing the nomination from Bernie? I'll answer that a little bit later as I get into what looks like they're trying to do, which is a brokered convention. I want to update you on what's going on with Julian Assange, because it's very important. And with the campaign and all the attention on that, I don't want people to lose sight of what is going on with Julian Assange. So there was a hearing today, first of his extradition hearing in the UK, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is at high risk of suicide if he is sent to the U.S. To face claims he endangered the lives of whistleblowers around the world, a court has heard. At an extradition hearing in London, Assange's lawyers argued he is the victim of a politically motivated prosecution that forms part of Donald Trump's, quote, war on investigative journalists. But the U.S. government claimed some sources had, quote, disappeared after the WikiLeaks founder put them at risk of serious harm, torture, or even death by leaking classified information. James Lewis, QC, opening the case against Assange, said on Monday that information published by WikiLeaks was useful to enemies of the U.S. In response, lawyers for the 48-year-old editor and political activist have warned he could face, quote, fatal consequences if he is extradited to America, where he faces 18 charges, including espionage and hacking allegations. Assange faces up to 175 years in jail if he is found guilty of all the charges, which relate to 2010 and 2011. Mr. Lewis told Woolwich Crown Court, which is sitting as a magistrate's court, that most of the charges related to, quote, straightforward criminal activity in a, quote, conspiracy to steal from and hack into the Department of Defense computer system. Quote, these are ordinary criminal charges, and any person, journalist or source, who hacks or attempts to gain unauthorized access to a secure system or aids and abets others to do so is guilty of computer misuse, the barrister said. So right here is why this is so dangerous. And for those of you who don't know specifically what they are talking about, thank you, Poopy Cake. Status Coup is awesome. Thank you, Heather C. $5. Thank you. Keep the super chats rolling. MT, $5. Keep it coming. For those of you that don't know what they're referring to when they say, when they say these are ordinary criminal charges, and any person, journalist, or source who hacks or attempts to gain unauthorized access to a secure system or aids and abets others to do so is guilty of computer misuse. So basically, what the Trump administration and the United Kingdom judge, in this case, is trying to do is trying to lump Julian Assange, a journalist, in with just any person. Because, frankly, journalists have different protections than any person would have. They're trying to say that Julian Assange, by talking to Chelsea Manning while Chelsea Manning in 2010 was trying to figure out the passwords to get into the Department of Defense system, they're trying to say that by Julian Assange, a journalist, essentially egging on Chelsea Manning to try and get into that system, that he aided and abetted Chelsea Manning's criminal activity. By the way, Chelsea Manning is still in solitary confinement in Virginia. Let's not forget that. So this is, of course, absurd. History does not do this to journalists. If they want to, be careful with the blue one. If they want to go after Julian Assange and say he aided and abetted Chelsea Manning in quote-unquote hacking the Department of Defense computer system, then they need to retroactively go back. I'm not saying I want this, but if they are going to be intellectually consistent, then they would have to retroactively go back and prosecute Daniel Ellsberg, Daniel Ellsberg. They would need to also, not Daniel Ellsberg. They would need to retroactively go back and prosecute the New York Times, the Washington Post, for publishing the Pentagon Papers. Because do you think the Washington Post, do you think the New York Times weren't egging on sources who were by their own choice choosing to break the law, to access documents, to get into databases? A journalist speaking with a source, and a source who is choosing to risk their own security, their own freedom for the greater good. A journalist not going to the authorities, a journalist, urging that source to do it is not a crime. That is not aiding and abetting. That is not participating in hacking into the Pentagon system. Julian Assange was never actively on a computer trying to hack into the Pentagon's files. That's just not true. It never has been true. That's why President Obama's Department of Justice did not prosecute WikiLeaks or Julian Assange, because they understood that that is not. That would be a total infringement and, frankly, demolishing the First Amendment. Of course, the Trump administration and his Department of Justice do not care about the First Amendment. They don't care about any amendment, really, other than the Second Amendment, for political gain. But the bottom line is, they have no case. This is not a real case. Julian Assange did not aid and abet Chelsea Manning. What this is trying to essentially kill any form of serious investigative journalism or radical whistleblowing. And people could argue all day about Julian Assange. There's some criticisms that I think are fair. There's others that I don't think are fair. He's not perfect. He's not a villain, like some people say, but he's certainly not perfect either. I think most objective person can agree that some of the things he's done are worth debating. But you cannot debate whether it was a good, heroic, momentous thing to expose war crimes the United States perpetrated against Iraq, against the Middle East, the disinformation and misinformation that went out to American citizens by our own government. You could say maybe WikiLeaks didn't take every proper protocol to protect sources. You could have that debate. But what the United Kingdom right now is doing, because frankly, I'm just going to be honest with you, to me, this looks like it's just being rubber stamped. You think Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the UK, who's BFF with Donald Trump, you think his courts are going to rule against extradition of Julian Assange to the United States? And this will have a chilling effect, because even if it is a Democratic president next, the precedent that is being set by the Trump administration and, frankly, the corporate media journalists who are basically silent on this. There is not a lot of reporters for the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Daily Beast, all these people who rant and rave about Trump's assault on freedom of the press. They're not out there speaking up for Julian Assange. Well, I am, because this isn't about whether Julian Assange is a good guy. It's not about whether he's a bad guy. It's not about whether you think he's a villain, whether you think he's a hero. It's not about whether you think he's a Russian asset or not. It is not about any of that. This is about criminalizing journalism. He might not be a journalist in the form of somebody that goes to press conferences and asks questions. He might not be a journalist in the form of somebody that sits down with politicians and throws them softball interviews. But any person, big, high profile or low profile, that exposes hard truths, that exposes the corruption of government, that exposes war crimes, is a journalist. And as a journalist, you cannot be thrown in jail for life, or it cannot be accused of aiding and abetting by simply being aware that a source might be committing a crime and basically talking to them while they're in the act of committing a crime and urging them to do so. That is not aiding and abetting. And journalism and the First Amendment protect journalists who do that. And if the Trump administration wants to redefine that, then frankly, they're going to have to retroactively go back And they're going to have to prosecute New York Times journalists who egged on sources to break the law, Washington Post journalists who spoke with and urged sources to break the law, and many others. I know a lot is going on. I know there's a lot of organizing right now. The Bernie campaign focused next on South Carolina, Super Tuesday. There's organizers and protesters and activists organizing around climate change, the gun rights, the gun control movement, immigration. There's so many different causes. There's so many different things people are focused on. But folks, do not lose sight on what is going on in the UK right now. If there are groups where you live, get involved with supporting Julian Assange. Again, it doesn't even matter if you think he's a hero or a villain. This is about journalism, not Julian Assange. So that's why I started with Julian Assange, because it's that important. And there's some people very close to me in my life that disagree with me on this. That's fine. But as a journalist, and Jen, who's in the super chat right now, and I'm not comparing myself to Julian Assange at all. But as a journalist who has worked on things and is currently working on certain things that I'm not breaking the law, but I might know sources that are taking grave risks to themselves to expose the truth. This has implications for me. This has implications for Jen. It has implications for all actual investigative journalists who take risks and expose to the truth. If they're going to get away with throwing Julian Assange in solitary confinement for the rest of his life, don't think they won't try to do it to me, to Glenn Greenwald, to Jeremy Scahill, to Aaron Maté, to name your pick. Abby Martin. So I will update you. I don't know if it's going to be me. It might be Jen, because I'm going to be on the ground in South Carolina, and I could only do so many things, but we will update you and keep you informed on what's going on with Julian Assange in the UK, because it's very, very important. So now that we got that important news out of the way, by the way, this is a loaded show. I also have an interview for you with Nancy Pelosi's primary challenger, Shahid Buttar. We're going to have that coming up in a little bit too. Oh my God, people blame Susan Sarandon for everything. Climate crisis, Trump's election, somebody farts in America, it's Susan Sarandon's fault. It's crazy. So yesterday, Twitter and everybody were getting so radically excited because Susan Sarandon dared say, I support Shahid Buttar. So we have Shahid Buttar, an interview with him. So excited to tell you. And by the way, welcome new Status Coup member, Corey. We are now at 1,534. 1,534 members. That would be 66 members away from 1,600. Let's get to 1,600 by the time I land in South Carolina. If we get to 1,600 by the time I land in South Carolina, then we are looking very good for Super Tuesday, which I'm going to get to in a little bit. So, as I set up the state of the political, of the campaign, let me show you the full results of the Nevada caucus here, which was, what can you say other than Bernie Sanders just destroyed the competition. Bernie Sanders, 47, round it, 47%. Uncle Joe down at 20%, so that would be what is that, 30, almost 30 points. Almost 30 points Joe Biden lost. Then you got Mayor CIA down at 14, and he has the audacity to go out again and pretend that he won something. Pete Buttigieg is one of the most vile creatures I've ever covered. We're going to get to him. Then you have Elizabeth Warren down at just about 10%, distant fourth place. And then Tom Steyer, who spent gobbles and gobbles and gobbles of money in Nevada, getting that big amount at almost 5%. Amy Klobuchar nearing 4%. So Bernie crushed it. He crushed it in everything. 73% of Latino voters voted for Bernie. Bernie won every tab. White voters. He won Latina voters. He won moderate voters. He won the most liberal voters. He won younger voters. He won older voters. Only thing he didn't win was over the age of 65, which is kind of expected when it comes to, demographics. But he won them all. And this is what the Democratic Party's critique of Bernie Sanders has always been. Well, he has a small window. He has a small little cult following, but he can't attract black people. And he can't attract Latinos, and he can't broaden his base. Well, he just got 73% of the Latino vote. Among the black vote, he came very close to beating Joe Biden. He competed with Joe Biden for the black vote in Nevada. He's getting moderate to conservative voters he won in Nevada. So this whole notion that Bernie Sanders has a ceiling was always bullshit. But now they're going to have a very hard time saying that. And remember, this is a super chat. Also remember, we got 1,144 viewers right now. 500 of you have pressed that like button. I need another 700 of you right now. It's the thumbs up button right under this live stream. The more people that press that thumbs up button, the more people that will see the live stream. That's how YouTube works. So keep it coming. Smash that like button. Smash that like button. Keep the super chats coming. I'll try to read as many as I can. And keep signing up. Statuscoup.com/join. Looks like it's going to be a big, long campaign. We have funding right now. We're going to South Carolina. I think we have funding after South Carolina to go to one of the Super Tuesday states. Past that, pretty blurry, to be honest with you, whether we're going to have the funding. So keep signing up. That's the only way we could do this. Statuscoup.com/join. If you liked Jen's coverage in Nevada, if you liked my coverage before that, there's more where that's coming from, but we need to fund it. Statuscoup.com/join. So I want to show you 2 videos before getting to Elizabeth Warren. Let's look at Joy Reid over at MSNBC on the day the Titanic went down. According to MSNBC, they acted like the Titanic had hit the iceberg on Saturday as Bernie won. Let's take a look.
Now it is the Sanders people, and I think that the rest of us that sort of look at politics have underestimated the sheer unadulterated rage, the anger of working class people, especially young people who are living with 3 roommates and have a Lyft job and an Uber job, and they can't make it, and they're looking at my generation, Gen X, who we could have it all in the Clinton years, and we were living well, and our parents and grandparents, and they're like, throw the tables over. They're turning the tables over, and they don't care what the potential result is. They're the hungriest, and he only had to consolidate them. And the moderates, the sort of mushy moderates, think that they have the luxury of luxuriating on whether they'll have someone who can speak 6 languages. Maybe today I want this woman who's from the Midwest, and, maybe I'll go with the vice president. And even African-American older voters, they are like, we're going to go with who we know. No one else is as hungry, angry, enraged, and determined as Sanders voters. Democrats need to sober up and figure out what the hell they're going to do about that. Because if he's the nominee, that's the top of your ticket. That's the top of your ticket for Senate races, House races, gubernatorial, everything. Figure out what you're going to do, because that's looking likely. Voters. Democrats need to sober up and figure out what the hell they're going to do about it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. It's almost like, babe, come here for a second.
No.
Come here.
No.
Okay. So it's almost like if you're in a relationship for a while and your girlfriend or your boyfriend, you've been together for a while, and then all of a sudden one day they just tell you, like, I'm really unhappy.
Sure.
No, not me. I'm just giving an analogy. I'm very happy with my girlfriend. We're moving in together. Love her, love her, love her. But it's almost like somebody who, like a partner in media, a partner in a relationship that just has no idea that their other partner is miserable. Like they say, Joy Reid, it's acting like, oh, we're just realizing that, half the country's poor. We're just realizing that half the country is, working 3 jobs. We're just realizing that a lot of the country is rationing insulin. And you want to know something? When she says We're just learning this. They're not just learning this. They already knew this. They just didn't give a shit. These people, from Joy Reid to Chris Matthews, who's comparing Bernie Sanders' victory in Nevada to the Nazis taking France, who's saying he's worried if Bernie wins, there's going to be executions in Central Park. By the way, for those of you commenting in the Super Chat, it was an analogy. I am very happy in my relationship. Are you happy? Mwah. Love her. They don't care. And that is the problem. And this is why I always talk about this. Why we need a status coup. Why we need status coup. And by the way, welcome new status coup member, Jose.
Woo! Welcome, Jose.
We are now at 1,535 status coup members. Just 65 members away from hitting 1,600. Let's keep it going. Statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5. I know that Jen just posted another behind the scenes video just for members. We're going to be doing our monthly members call, I guess this week. I don't know how I'm going to do it while I'm in South Carolina, but we got to do it because the month is ending. So we do a video call just with members. So keep signing up. Statuscoup.com/join. So Joy Reid and MSNBC essentially are admitting that they are either blatantly bad at their jobs and had no idea what was going on with the mood of the country, how economically starving people are, how economically desperate people are, how economically furious people are. Or they're admitting they knew all along and just didn't give a fuck. Either way, it's unacceptable. And this is why I always talk about the issue in media, right? It's not just that there's a lack of diversity in terms of what people look like. Yeah, I mean, there definitely should be more representation of African Americans, Latinos, indigenous, all across the board in media. But the true diversity issue in media is class. That's why the interviews that that's why the interviews that Jen do with real people, you never see it on MSNBC. You never see those people on MSNBC. You never see those people on CNN. You don't see them quoted in the New York Times and the Washington Post. Why? Because they don't want the truth to get out there of the sheer misery. They don't want the truth to get out there of the sheer economic desperation. They don't want it to get out that after people, 3 decades ago could work, one person in a married couple could work. You didn't need 2 people to work. You didn't need people to work 3 jobs. They don't want the truth to get out there that so many people are working a full-time job and then coming home and driving Lyft and Uber because they can't afford their rent and their groceries and their medication. That's what is showing on screen in front of your eyes on MSNBC, CNN. They're all out of touch, and intentionally so. And they don't want the status quo to change. But it looks like they're not going to have much of a choice. And I think another segment on MSNBC shows this really well. Let's take a look.
4 years ago, when Donald Trump was running for the Republican nomination, you and I were talking, and you described the GOP as an airplane that had been hijacked by Donald Trump, and yet everybody in the back of the plane were cheering the hijackers on. 4 years later, it seems that it's Bernie Sanders that has burst through the cockpit door, and the passengers once again cheering while those owning the airlines are pulling their hair out. What's happening?
Well, I think without getting into false equivalency about Sanders and Trump, I think that we are living in a kind of political equivalent of climate change, is extreme weather.
So we have Chris Matthews comparing Bernie Sanders supporters to the brown shirts a couple of weeks ago. Then we had Chris Matthews suggesting that there might be executions in Central Park if Bernie Sanders were to win the presidency. Then we have Chris Matthews comparing Bernie Sanders winning Nevada to Germany, the Nazis taking France. And now we have Joe Scarborough comparing, Bernie Sanders and a populist progressive politician to hijacking planes. You just can't make this stuff up. But Joe Scarborough is actually correct about something. He has it in reverse. There has been a hijacking of a plane. And you want to know who the hijackers were? The bankers, the fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, and the plutocrats like Michael Bloomberg and the Koch brothers and Soros and all of these people. I don't care if they give to philanthropy. Great. That's great that they give to philanthropy. But how are they getting so rich? It's because they have hijacked American democracy and made this the United Corporations of America. And you want to know what that hijacking looks like, ladies and gentlemen? That's what it looks like. You've seen it before. You see it again. That red line is the hijacking. No wonder people are upset, Joy Reid. No wonder people are attracted to Bernie Sanders, Chris Matthews, Jennifer Rubin, who's a paid idiot at the Washington Post. That red line is the United States, and that's to 2015, so we don't even have the last 5 years. But I think you get the picture. Yeah, there has been a plane hijacked. It's called the United Corporations of America storming the cockpit and stealing your money, your futures, and your lives. Here's another one. Look familiar? You working 2 to 3 jobs, you doing more with less at your job as your wages stay flat? Donald Trump, wages are up 0.8%. Give me a fucking break. And by the way, welcome new Status Coup member, Sana.
Woo! Welcome, Sana! Woo!
Welcome new Status Coup member, hold on, James.
Woo! Welcome, James!
So I believe that puts us, hold on, let me make sure I got it right. La-da-dee, la-da-da, what life will be. We are now at 1,300 and... Excuse me, oh my God, I got it wrong. 1,537 Status Coup members. So that would be 63 members away from hitting that 1,600. Keep signing up, statuscoup.com/join. I'm hitting the road to South Carolina tomorrow. We're going to be there all week, and we're hoping we have the funds to then go. We're thinking right now it's going to be California for Super Tuesday. Keep signing up, statuscoup.com/join. So, now that we have the MSNBC freak out of the way, and thank you so much. Keep the super chats coming. Sorry if I'm missing any. I'm trying to do a lot of things at once. Thank you, the Smith Elvis, €5 in the super chat. Big fan of Status Coup here in Ireland. I have become a member. Thank you. Become a member of Status Coup now, not tomorrow. Well done, Jordan and Jen. Great work. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Elvis has entered the building. Thank you for the super chat, and thank you for signing up as a member. So, now you're seeing the propaganda coming out of MSNBC. Let's take a look. We got new polls here. Morning Consult, the latest after the Nevada caucus. Bernie Sanders nationally is up 13 points over Michael Bloomberg, who I have no idea after that debate how Michael Bloomberg has gone up after that debate. That is stunning to me. He must be buying off the polls. I don't know how Michael Bloomberg went up 2 points after that debate is insane. But he's down to Bernie, 13 points. Then you got Uncle Joe Biden down 14 points nationally to Bernie. Then you got Mayor CIA down there all the way at 11%. Then you got Elizabeth Warren, again, down at 11%. That's nationally. Among black voters, this is the first time Bernie Sanders has taken the lead, according to Morning Consult, by 5 percentage points over Biden. Bloomberg, again, just absolutely stunning. I don't want to be a white guy questioning black voters, but it is stunning that Bloomberg is 25% of the black vote, considering his record. Warren, strong showing there at 5%, and Mayor CIA down at 3%. Then you have Bernie with, I missed Hispanic voters. Bernie, commanding lead, 45%. Bloomberg next at 16. Warren at 14, Biden at 9, Buttigieg at 8% among Latinos. Bernie among white voters, 29, Bloomberg 17, Biden 15. Let's look at South Carolina, where I'm going tomorrow. Thanks to you. Sign up, statuscoup.com/join. It's close. I mean, Biden is hemorrhaging support. Down 17 points since this last CBS YouGov poll. Still in the lead, 28 percentage points, so that's 24, 25. Biden up 5 points, but he has lost 17 points among voters in South Carolina. Bernie up 8 points at 23%. Steyer, I mean, you got to give it to him. He's up 16 points. He's spent a lot of money and a lot of time in South Carolina. He's at 18%. Warren down 5 points. Buttigieg plus 2 at 10%. And Klobuchar at 3. I think tomorrow's debate is probably the most important debate in Bernie Sanders' political career. He's never had a debate that he has been the actual front runner in the presidential race. He is going to be getting it from every single direction, from every single candidate are going to be going straight for Bernie's jugular. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But I do think this debate is going to have a major impact on whether Bernie Sanders could actually win South Carolina. It also hasn't been formally announced, but South Carolina Senator James Clyburn is going to endorse Joe Biden. I don't put a lot of stock in endorsements, but James Clyburn's endorsement is one that actually matters. He's a big, big deal in South Carolina politics, particularly among older black voters. They take his endorsement very, very seriously. It's not surprising that he would endorse Biden. But to tell you the truth, folks, I know the momentum. Everybody wants Bernie to win South Carolina. To tell you the truth, if Bernie Sanders finishes 5 points behind Joe Biden in South Carolina, that's a victory. And that is a crushing defeat if you're Joe Biden. If Joe Biden can only beat Bernie Sanders by 5 in South Carolina, which is one of the most African-American voting constituencies, where Barack Obama won in 2008, obviously 2012, he cannot, first of all, in terms of delegates, this is a numbers game. He's not going to get enough delegates for him to really get back into the game against Bernie Sanders. But more importantly, how do you claim you're most electable if you get crushed in Iowa, if you get crushed in New Hampshire, if you get crushed in Nevada? He could say, oh, I came in second. Well, you lost by 27 points, so it's not exactly a big victory if you're Joe Biden. But if you could only beat Bernie Sanders in South Carolina by 5 points when you were at one point probably, I think he was up by 30, I don't really know how are you more electable? How are you the most electable? He needs to win by double digits in South Carolina for it to be truly considered a win. I don't see that happening. I do not see that happening. I'm not going to lie to you. It would be good for business if I did lie to you. It would be great for business if I told you I think Bernie has a chance to win South Carolina. I think there's a chance. He could win South Carolina. His campaign announced today that they are adding, I believe, $500,000 in television ads this week into South Carolina. You would have to think if Bernie's campaign is adding more money into South Carolina, you only do that if you're obviously the outside polling, the public polling is showing it's close, but you only do it if your internal polling is showing that could actually make the difference in losing by 5 points or losing by 2 or 3 points, or in winning. That's, $500,000. We're talking about monopoly money here, the type of money that's being raised. But $500,000 to throw into South Carolina, when you also have to spend money in California and Texas and these other Super Tuesday states, it's a lot of money to put in. So I think there's a chance. I also think, frankly, I'm not going to lie to you, tomorrow is going to be a bloodbath for Bernie Sanders. It remains to be seen. He has never been in a debate where he's been attacked by 4 or 5 people at the same time. He's been attacked by the media in every debate. But he's never been the direct target of every single candidate the entire debate. You would have to expect that to happen tomorrow because Biden has to go at Bernie. He's going to go at him over guns. He's going to go at him over supposedly Bernie Sanders, tried to primary Obama in 2012, which isn't even true, but he's going to try and make it true. He's going to go after him on immigration. He's going to go after him on a lot of things. But to me, the key here, and I do believe this, if Bernie Sanders comes close, again, I think Bernie Sanders, if he loses by 5, claim victory and go on. I think the key in South Carolina is going to be Bernie Sanders' campaign strategy, and that's millennial African Americans. Not just millennials, but African Americans under the age of 40, which is not just the millennials. It's Gen, is that Z? Yeah, I think that's Gen Z or Gen X. I don't know. Bernie Sanders' campaign has worked as hard as they worked in Nevada to bring out those Latino voters. They have worked very, very hard to expand the millennial black vote, the under 40 black vote. They are working to get some of the older African American vote, but they're not banking on that. It will be very, very important. If Bernie Sanders is going to be competitive, if Bernie Sanders even has a chance to win, he needs to bring out, a lot more younger, under 40 African American voters. From conversations I've had with people in the campaign, Nina Turner has been on the ground in South Carolina many, many times. Cornel West has been on the ground in South Carolina several times. Actor Danny Glover has been on the ground in South Carolina many times. Killer Mike, the rapper, has been on the ground in South Carolina several times. They have had very, very high-level, influential black politicians, as well as black influencers like Cornel West and entertainers like Killer Mike on the ground, specifically to try and galvanize the younger African-American vote in South Carolina. Because the Democratic Party's number one most reliable voter is older black women. That's just a fact. So I'm going to be honest. I don't know if older black voters are going to, in droves, abandon Joe Biden for Bernie Sanders. I think they are scared of the word socialist, even when it's explained. They have, they believe what they believe. They've been conditioned to believe what they believe, and that's that. But I do think there's a chance that if Bernie Sanders could expand the base, if Bernie Sanders could get an extra, 5 to 7% of younger, under the age of 40 black voters to come out, I do think he could win South Carolina, because I think Joe Biden's support is hemorrhaging. I also think when you look at this poll, look at this. Tom Steyer and all the money he spent is a big reason why Biden is taking. So if Tom Steyer, who is qualified for this debate tomorrow, if Tom Steyer does well in that debate, it seems to me, when you look at these numbers, it seems to me Joe Biden is losing the most support to Tom Steyer. Well, if Tom Steyer does really, really well in that debate, you might see more defections to Tom Steyer. I don't think those defections to Tom Steyer would allow Tom Steyer to move all the way up to surpass Bernie Sanders. But Tom Steyer right now is Bernie Sanders' best friend in South Carolina. Because if Tom Steyer could pluck another maybe 3 percentage points from Joe Biden, while Bernie Sanders gets another 2 or 3, Bernie Sanders is going to win South Carolina. So, hey, Tom, this is the one time I say it. We welcome your billions. Thank you, Eugene Debs, $20. What do you think will happen in South Carolina? Will the walking corpse win? I find that hard to believe. I'm not going to lie to you. It's hard for me to say today. I could tell you what I think today. A lot could change based on the debate tomorrow. I think this is the most important debate Bernie Sanders has ever been in. Today, I think Joe Biden, unless he completely collapses in this debate tomorrow, if Tom Perez has an amazing debate, I think Joe Biden probably would win by 2 to 3 points is what I would give him, which to me is a victory. If Bernie Sanders loses by 2 to 3 points in South Carolina, by the way, he lost to Hillary Clinton, I believe, by over 30 points. Check me on that, Jen. That's a victory. And the media, I don't even think the media would lie and say that, Joe Biden should be bragging he won South Carolina by 2 to 3 points. And Joe Biden winning South Carolina by 2 to 3 points is not going to do enough for him to really have a surge into Super Tuesday. Remember, California early voting has already begun. Texas early voting has already begun. A lot of these states early voting has already begun. So it's not like what happens in this week or in South Carolina is going to make all the difference, because a lot of the voters would have already voted. So to me, it's all about the debate tomorrow. And I watched Bernie Sanders' 60 Minutes interview yesterday. I thought it was very good. Predictably, I mean, not shockingly, the media is in a tizzy because he had the audacity to say, yeah, Fidel Castro, authoritarian, did terrible things, but he also, did some literacy programs, helped the poor eat. But, they can't go after Bernie Sanders on policy, so they really only could go after him on trying to make him a Russian asset, which we're going to get into, on trying to make it seem like he kowtows to crazy authoritarians. There's no there there. They can't go after him because they know universal health care is wildly popular. They know free public college, wildly popular. They know a Green New Deal, wildly popular. All these things, wildly popular. So they're just going to try to scare the living fuck out of old people. That is what they're trying to do. I don't think it's going to work. I just don't think it's going to work. I think because younger people have become so activated in politics, thanks to Occupy and Bernie, because a lot of older people, frankly, are starting to wake the hell up. I just don't think, listen, if you're an older person and your main concern is preserving Social Security, are you going to abandon the candidate who's most clear on that because, he made a nice comment about Fidel Castro? I don't think so. If you're a middle-aged person, are you going to abandon Bernie Sanders because, he's not fire-breathing against Russia? I don't think so. I just don't think so. And remember, folks, we got almost 1,500 people watching. 980 of you have pressed that like button. I need over 750 more of you. Smash that like button. It's right under the live stream. It's the thumbs up button. Smash that like button. We need to get closer to 1,500 likes. Lickety-split. Lickety-split. So, we got South Carolina. I'm about to get to Elizabeth Warren, but I want to read you some of the other polls. We have Texas, basically a tie. Bernie up 8, Biden down 3. We have Massachusetts. Elizabeth Warren is right now losing her own state. Bernie up 1. California, the biggest get of all states, the most delegates. They got 400-something delegates at stake. 494 delegates are at stake in California. Texas has 261. Bernie is up by 8 points. California. This one is major. Bernie Sanders has taken the lead in New York. 25 to Bloomberg's 21. By the way, New York, after California, has the most delegates up for grabs. 320 delegates. 538, Nate Silver's company, has Bernie Sanders' average projected delegates at 1,796. That would fall below the 1,951 needed to clinch it on the first ballot, but they have Bernie by almost 1,000 over Biden in pledged delegates, over 1,000 over Bloomberg. I mean, just crushing Warren, crushing Pete. But this is the name of the game here. This is the name of the game. Right here, 1,796. This is where things lie and why today. I am a journalist. Most journalists don't say this, but I don't really follow rules. The boo birds can come at me if they want. It's time for Elizabeth Warren to drop out of the presidential race. Thank you, Jacob, $20 in the super chat. Thanks for the 2016 primary coverage with Eric Byler. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I say this not because she's a woman. I say this not because I hate her. I say this not because she's disappointed me. I say this because right now, and by the way, Tulsi Gabbard has to as well. Sorry. I know a lot of Tulsi Gabbard people don't like to hear that, but it is what it is. She's been screwed. She's been treated unfairly. She hasn't gotten the media attention she should have gotten. She hasn't gotten the fair treatment she hasn't gotten. But the The reality is the reality, and right now, even that 1% or 2% could make a difference. Elizabeth Warren, right now, if you look at the polls, well, first off, let me show you. When you look at candidates' top second choices, so the candidates' supporters, who is their top second choice? Elizabeth Warren's supporters, overwhelmingly, is Bernie Sanders. 38% of Elizabeth Warren supporters, their top second choice is Bernie Sanders. Okay? Buttigieg, definitely not. That's 20% of his supporters. Not shockingly, Buttigieg's supporters' next second choice is Bloomberg. Biden, I would call him to drop out, but he's not going to. Biden's top second choice is 33%. Bloomberg, let's not worry about that. So Elizabeth Warren, by an overwhelming number, her voters' top second choice is Bernie Sanders. So when you look at these numbers, I mean, the bottom line is Elizabeth Warren, she announced before any candidate, she announced in December 2018. She announced. So she's been running now for almost 2 years. She had the most money to start. She transferred $10 million from her Senate campaign to her presidential campaign. Remember, that was money she raised doing the big dollar fundraisers. She pretends that she didn't have big dollar fundraisers. She did in her Senate race. She did big dollar fundraisers with plutocrats in Martha's Vineyard, in Silicon Valley, in D.C., in Manhattan, and then she transferred the money. The media told us, Elizabeth Warren has the biggest ground game in Iowa. She came in third in Iowa. She is from Massachusetts, right next to Vermont. Right next to Massachusetts. She came in an embarrassing fourth place. Then we moved west. She had, other than Bernie Sanders, the best ground game of any candidate. She came in a very, very distant fourth place in Nevada. Okay? So the bottom line is, I am with you. I'd like to see a woman president. To me, I'd love it to be Nina Turner. But the bottom line is, Elizabeth Warren, she does not have a path to the nomination. She is polling right now in South Carolina. Let's take a look. At 12%. That's down 5 points. In Texas, she's polling at 17%, in third place. In Massachusetts, she's losing in her own state. In California, she's down 8 to Bernie. In New York, 11%. Nationally, she's down at 11%. That's fourth, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth, well, tied with Pete. So the bottom line is this. Elizabeth Warren doesn't have a path. It's not like, Elizabeth Warren's only path to the nomination would be somehow getting Bernie Sanders supporters to change their mind and come back to her. That's not going to happen. Barring an unprecedented, monumental, terrible debate by Bernie Sanders tomorrow, which I don't expect, Bernie Sanders supporters are not fleeing for Elizabeth Warren. When Joe Biden drops out of the way, if and when Joe Biden drops out of the race, I just showed you, Joe Biden's second choice among his voters is Bernie Sanders. They would go to Bernie Sanders. Pete, because he's a total lunatic narcissist who thinks coming in third place means let's do a victory tweet, who declares victory in Iowa when no results are out. He ain't dropping out. He's got money, and he's got way too high of an opinion of himself. So it really comes down to Elizabeth Warren. And, I know there's people that are going to say, Jordan, you're being sexist, this and that. I don't care if she has a penis, a vagina, or is glow in the dark. I really don't give a shit. The bottom line is this. If Elizabeth Warren is truly sincere that she wants Medicare for all in this country, if Elizabeth Warren is truly sincere that she wants to shrink corporate power, that she wants anti-corruption laws in this country, that she wants to take money out of politics, that she wants tighter regulation on Wall Street, that she wants, 75 different plans for 100 different things. If she is sincere, then she is serving no purpose right now other than to hurt Bernie Sanders. Thank you, Carol Edwards, $50. Thank you. Elizabeth Warren should, but won't. Okay, that's an opinion. I happen to agree with you. Jim Garrison, $10. Warren, snake in the grass. Jim. Thanks for the super chat. Lady Hawk, $9.99. I'm a Tulsi crap, but I think she'll drop after Super Tuesday and endorse Bernie. She needs to be his VP because the establishment fears her even more than Bernie. That might be what she's thinking and planning to do. I don't know if I missed any others. But look at Elizabeth Warren right now. Look every single one of these contests. If she were not in the race, I mean, look at it. That 12% in South Carolina. If she's not in the race right now, the majority of that is going to Bernie Sanders. He would be either tied or leading in South Carolina. Texas, same story, 17%. Majority of that going to Bernie. Massachusetts is not going to be critical that Bernie wins, but obviously, if Bernie's beating her in Massachusetts right now, her home state, critical. Bernie would win in a landslide if Warren were to drop out before her home state. California, Bernie would win in a landslide if Warren were not in it. New York, Bernie wins in a landslide. I'm not saying every single one of her voters goes to Bernie, but according to the data, the majority of her voters' top second choice is Bernie Sanders. So the bottom line is, we have these people out there who say, well, it's democracy and people should get to stay in as long as they want. Let's stop pretending here that Elizabeth Warren, if she chooses to stay in, this is about democracy. This is about, her message, whatever that is, because it keeps changing. She just flip-flopped on our entire campaign's principle in a span of a week. Oh, super PACs are terrible. Oh, corruption. Oh, I don't take any big money. Oh, wait, I'm hemorrhaging money. I have no money left. Super PAC? Yes, please. And then she has the gall to condone her having a super PAC by shielding herself and claiming it's sexist to suggest she shouldn't. Give me a fucking break. I'm sorry. I know I'm a man, but, I really think it's cynical to defend you flip-flopping on the core principle of your entire campaign by claiming, well, all the men have it. This isn't about being a man or a woman. This is about, do you have integrity or not? When Bernie Sanders had a heart attack and everybody was declaring him politically dead, he didn't say, oh, things are not looking so hot. Let me just kind of flip-flop and start taking money from Michael Bloomberg. So, I don't know what Elizabeth Warren's goal of staying in this is other than banking. And remember, we are 63. Right now, we are 63 members away from 1,600 members. If you're not a Status Coup member, you get great behind-the-scenes content. Jen just uploaded a members video tonight. We want to sign up as many new members as we can because, frankly, it's super expensive to travel in the field. It's super expensive to travel on a campaign trail. There's flights, hotels, rent a car, food. We do need to buy a new camera because ours isn't so great. So statuscoup.com/join. You can support our in-the-field reporting for as low as $5 a month. Makes a big difference. And we're going to have our monthly members call coming up soon. So Elizabeth Warren, honestly, the only reason that she would be staying in this race is to deprive Bernie Sanders of the 1,951 delegates he needs to clinch the nomination. The only reason she would be doing that is if she believes that the media, the Democratic Party establishment, the think tanks, and the entire Democratic establishment machine would push her as a compromise candidate at the convention. A candidate that can, quote, unite the two different wings of the Democratic Party, the progressive wing with the quote-unquote moderate wing, which is bullshit because they're not moderate, they're right wing. And I'm here to tell the establishment that they are completely delusional if they think that's going to happen. I am here to tell you that if Bernie Sanders goes into that convention with nearly 1,000 more delegates than the next person, and they choose somebody else, I don't know many Bernie Sanders supporters that would vote for the Democratic nominee. I want to be clear, that's not me telling people what to do. I'm telling you based on my reporting around this country, based on what I'm seeing in the movement right now. If they steal this from Bernie Sanders, which that's what it would be, I do not think that Bernie Sanders voters would vote for Jesus if that were the nominee they chose. So you really, and by the way, all these people that say, well, Bernie's a hypocrite because in 2016, he tried to convince superdelegates to go to him when Hillary had more pledged delegates. Well, those were the rules in 2016. He tried to change them because he didn't agree with those, and the progressive movement doesn't agree with them. We don't believe superdelegates should exist, much less get to decide who becomes the nominee. We believe, as progressives, in one person, one vote. So Bernie Sanders in 2016 played by the existing rules by also pushing for the rules to change. We push for the abolishment of superdelegates. The compromise was moving them to the second ballot, which I said at the time, don't think this is like a total victory because it could come into play. And that's what Elizabeth Warren is hoping, that it does come into play. So they could call Bernie a hypocrite if they want. But if you're going to, if you are a progressive, if Elizabeth Warren is claiming to be a progressive, and she thinks it is a progressive thing that she could enter the convention with, 0.7% of the majority of delegates, and then be named the compromise candidate, she's more delusional than I thought. That ain't going to happen. And if she actually succeeded at that, if she succeeded in becoming the nominee at a brokered convention by framing herself as the compromise candidate, she would lose to Donald Trump in a landslide. Why? Because Bernie Sanders voters would not vote for her. Again, I'm not telling you whether they should or not. I'm telling you that's what would happen. There is no way in hell that progressive people in this country, after the progressive candidate finally gets the most votes, after the progressive candidate finally overcomes the rigging primary by primary, after the progressive candidate's message breaks through, there's no way in hell the progressive movement is going to reward the Democratic establishment to then steal it from Bernie Sanders. And those who say you're going to have to put on your big boy pants and big boy shoes and hold your nose and vote because we can't take another 4 years of Trump. No, that's not how it works. That's on the Democratic establishment to realize that. If the Democratic establishment is sincere that their number one thing is defeating Donald Trump, then by screwing Bernie at the convention, they are signing Donald Trump's 4 more years right then and there. And they can't blame the Bernie Sanders supporters. You can't steal something from millions of people and then blame them after for not thanking you. Windy Melly, $5 in the super chat. Want to bet that the first question they ask at Bernie's town hall tonight is on Fidel Castro? That's possible. That's possible. Bernie does have a town hall tonight. Yep, I don't know if it's going to be the first, but it might be the first or second, for sure. Welcome new Status Coup member Frida. Woo! Frida. Now we are 62 members away from hitting 1,600. Keep signing up. We need to get more members because, folks, I know we're just looking at this week, but the way things are looking, I mean, let me show you this. The way things are looking here, oh, I just canceled it. This is going to be a long campaign in a good way. To me, right now, the odds are Bernie Sanders is going to win the nomination. I mean, let me restate. Bernie Sanders is going to have the most delegates going into the convention. So the only way that we're going to be able to cover past South Carolina, Super Tuesday, and beyond is if we grow. I mean, we are a young company. We're less than 2 years old. We don't have any big funding. We have no financial industry funding, no Wall Street, no money from the fossil fuckers, no money from Big Pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, the plutocrats funding the Democratic Party, the plutocrats funding the Republican Party. It's you, baby. Statuscoup.com/join. But every new membership makes a big difference. I know it doesn't sound like much, $5 a month. We have other plans at $10 a month, $20 a month, $179 annually. But collectively, the more members we have, it's the same principle as what Bernie Sanders is doing. The quantity of members is super important, even at that low dollar amount, because when $5 memberships and $10 memberships stack up and keep stacking up, then you have enough money for flights. Then you have enough money for hotels, rent-a-cars, food, equipment. We would like to hire additional help. It's just Jen and I, basically. You just saw what Jen did in Nevada. Would you like to see Jen on camera more? Would you like to see Jen traveling and reporting in the field more? Well, somebody's got to do Jen's marketing and social media and email marketing and all the great things she does behind the scenes that you don't know about. If we're going to get her doing more reporting, we need money to hire someone for that. So there's a lot of things here, and we're not Elizabeth Warren. We're not flip-flopping. We're not going to change course and take corporate money. It's not going to happen. Save the videotape. Not going to happen. So we really, really need more signups. Statuscoup.com/join. Let's see if we can get to 1,600 very, very early on, maybe by the time I get to South Carolina. So I'd like to hear from you. What is Elizabeth Warren doing here? And I don't really care if people think this is sexist. I don't care if people think this is wrong. I don't give a damn. This is math. This is politics. She had a chance to show that she had some momentum. She had a chance to show that she would have a path to the nomination. She has shown she is not the choice of voters. She's just not. We could debate why that is, but the bottom line is she's not. When you come in fourth place in New Hampshire, which is right next to Massachusetts, that says something. When you come in fourth place in Nevada, where you had a big ground game, that says something. By the way, they spent a lot of money in the last week before the Nevada caucus, her super PAC in Nevada. Didn't make a difference. So I don't know what the argument is. And I don't know how you could truly claim, to champion things like Medicare for all, free college, all the 2,000 plans she has put out there. Well, if you're sincere about that, then you should be trying to help move the candidate with the real chance here over the finish line. Because all that she is doing right now, I mean, I already showed you the numbers. Just look at the numbers. If she were not in this race right now, if she would have dropped out, that 12%, the majority of that is going to Bernie Sanders. That would put him over the edge in South Carolina. Same thing in Texas. 17%, that puts him over the edge of Texas. Massachusetts, obviously. California, looks like he's going to win anyway, but definitely solidifies it. There is no reason for her to continue to be in this race. She is not playing to win right now. She is playing basically for a contested convention, and that is extremely selfish. By the way, I think Pete Buttigieg should drop out too. I'm just not calling for it because I know he's a sociopath and does not actually care about progress for the country. He has a dream to be president, and he's going to do whatever the hell he has to do to become it. I know Joe Biden is not going to drop out because he's a delusional old man. Amy Klobuchar should drop out too. But I know they're not because they do not believe in progressive causes. They don't believe in populism. They don't believe in getting money out of politics. Elizabeth Warren claims to believe in those things. Well, put your money where your mouth is, Senator Warren. Eugene Debs, $10. Remind me what happens to Warren delegates if she drops out. They're still her delegates. And Warren chooses who to give those delegates to at the convention. That's what happens. But this isn't about the convention. This is about right now. With her still in the race, she is obstructing Bernie Sanders from winning several of these states. She is obstructing Bernie Sanders from reaching the critical number that he would need to reach to totally neutralize and get rid of even the chance of a brokered convention. If Elizabeth Warren is not in this race, Bernie Sanders, the way it looks right now, let's not get completely ahead of ourselves, but if she's not in this race, Bernie Sanders would win, would get to 1,951. He'd get to 1,951 because that 248, that's not what she has now in delegates. That's what they're projecting her to have. Right now, she doesn't have a lot of delegates. But as she stays in the race, that 248 puts Bernie Sanders over the top. So I think this is selfish. I think this is me politics before we politics. And what do you expect? She's got a bunch of Hillary Clinton people around her. She has a bunch of Obama people around her. And she is clearly shown in this campaign to be very much focused on herself. I mean, that's just the truth. Welcome, new Status Coup member, Ronnie!
Welcome, Ronnie. What up?
Woohoo! We are now at 1,539 Status Coup members. Just 61 members away from hitting that 1,600. Keep signing up, statuscoup.com/join. Going to do a Q&A at the end of this, so keep signing up. So the last thing I'll say on Elizabeth Warren. Oh, hold on. Welcome, new member, another Jose.
Welcome, another Jose.
Woohoo! Statuscoup.com/join. We are now 60 members away from 1,600. Keep it coming. Statuscoup.com/join. The last thing I will say about Elizabeth Warren, and I will say this. You know, we as a society, and we, particularly in the progressive movement, are pretty unforgiving people, I would say. You know, people are still very, very against Elizabeth Warren, and were totally against her because she didn't endorse Bernie Sanders in 2016. You look at the people of Standing Rock and all the environmental activists that were there and all the Native Americans, obviously, that were there. They still haven't forgotten her blatant missing in action in Standing Rock. You look at all the things that have gone on in this campaign. Her stabbing Bernie Sanders in the front. She didn't stab him in the back. She stabbed him in the front with this total nonsense, breaching a private conversation with Bernie Sanders, leaking it to the media, pretending that he said a woman can't win, which is definitely not what he said. Okay? I think us in the progressive movement, you know, if you get on the diehards' bad side, it's very hard for them to forgive. But we're talking right now, if Elizabeth Warren is truly a progressive, if she truly believes in the things she's saying, right now is your chance for forgiveness. Right now is your chance to prove to the progressive movement, yes, you've made some mistakes in the past, but I am in for progressive change, and as such, I am not going to step in the way of the person who has paved the way for all of this. The reason Medicare for All is polling at 6 out of 10 voters in Nevada that just voted, are for Medicare for All. 6 out of 10 in New Hampshire were for Medicare for All. 6 out of 10 in Iowa were for Medicare for All. The overwhelming majority of America is for Medicare for All. The reason, because of that, is Bernie Sanders. Of course, the nurses and the organizers who have helped, but Bernie Sanders has moved the Overton window, not Elizabeth Warren. So if she wants to get these progressive things done, then she should drop out and support Bernie Sanders, because by her dropping out, she could put Bernie Sanders over the top to win the nomination, to clinch the necessary delegates to win it on the first ballot. That's the bottom line. Now, Michael Bloomberg. Oh my God. Oh my God. Let me sip some tea so I don't get too excited here. Michael Bloomberg, who is a hot air balloon of greed, corruption, racism, sexism, and vile plutocracy. Michael Bloomberg today, tweeted out, pity the billionaire, I say. Michael Bloomberg tweeted out today that his office was defaced in Flint, Michigan. Why Michael Bloomberg has an office in Flint, Michigan, I don't know. His office in Flint, Michigan is Eat the Rich. Somebody put an Eat the Rich on there. You know what, Michael Bloomberg, who tweets out, Eat the Rich, our office in Flint, Michigan, America deserves better. By the way, for those of you that don't know, this April is 6 years since Flint, Michigan has had clean water. 6 years. As somebody on Twitter pointed out, Mike Bloomberg could have funded the entire Flint water crisis recovery and still had $100 million to spare with his total campaign investment to date. But Mike Bloomberg wants people to cry crocodile tears because somebody wrote "Eat the Rich" on his Flint office. Go fuck yourself, Mike Bloomberg. Acting like this is the worst thing to happen in Flint, Michigan. But that's not it. Mike Bloomberg's campaign manager was interviewed, and here's what he had to say. We're going to spend Trump out of office. Mike's got the record to do it. You stack Mike up, who he is, what his record is, where he is on the issues, and his ability to get his message out. Mike wins the general election. Even on stage against Trump, it is vastly easier to be on stage with one person. Yeah, Mike could handle that. Yeah, because, Mike handled the Democratic debate he was on last week so well. So this is Mike Bloomberg's new bumper sticker. I kid you not. We're going to spend Trump out of office. I think Mike Bloomberg and his campaign officials might want to watch some Occupy Wall Street videos, might want to go to a Bernie Sanders rally, might want to go to a Donald Trump rally. I am here to tell you, the more ads, if it was Michael Bloomberg versus Donald Trump, Michael Bloomberg could spend his entire fortune. He could spend $60 billion. It will actually have the opposite effect. People will get so nauseous, so tired, so overwhelmed with this theatrical creation of a man that's not the real Michael Bloomberg, just what his advertisements are making him look like, that they'll just go vote for Trump. People are smarter. It's a new age. People are smarter than your advertising. And by the way, you can only advertise your way so much. People are going to see you during debates. And you're a terrible debater because there's no there. People are going to see you in interviews if you became the nominee. There's no there. There's a lot of racism there. There's a lot of evil plutocracy there. There's a lot of trying to, increase the cost of Social Security, cut Social Security. This would be a total disaster. But the arrogance of Michael Bloomberg and his campaign, if that wasn't enough, them saying, we're just going to buy it to beat Trump. Then they say, now Bernie, this is his campaign manager. Now Bernie will never be the choice of 50% of the voters in the Democratic primary. The rules are designed to give you more delegates than the votes you get in multi-candidate field. That's the way they're designed. So if you're beneath 15% in any race, you get no delegates. And then they apportion to the people that are above them. I do find it odd. There was obviously a question to debate, which is, hey, if someone has a plurality, should they just become the nominee? And there is this almost like broad acceptance. Well, yeah, you're first across the line, but this really is a party primary. And the question is, who should the party get behind? And I look at it very different, which is to say, well, shouldn't the majority decide? Bernie is basically arguing that a minority should decide the candidates for the party. So this is very instructive because Michael Bloomberg's campaign manager, speaking for Michael Bloomberg, seems to think that the majority is not the actual voters of America, that the majority is superdelegates. They should decide, because that's what this means. If Bernie doesn't get 1,951 delegates, then it would go to a second ballot. And to Michael Bloomberg and his campaign manager, the majority is superdelegates. That would be congressmen, senators, lobbyists, big donors, plutocrats, the bourgeoisie. That's the majority to Michael Bloomberg. Let me tell you something. If Michael Bloomberg thinks that they're going to rig it, he's going to buy off the superdelegates, which his campaign has already acknowledged they are currently trying to do. They're just trying to donate and buy off superdelegates to vote for him on the second ballot. If they then think, that as the nominee, they're going to then spend $1 billion during the general election and then beat Donald Trump. Here's the problem with that. I don't know one Bernie Sanders voter who would vote for Michael Bloomberg if they steal the nomination for Bernie Sanders and gives it to Michael Bloomberg. And you want to know something? I'm pretty sure I don't know one because Michael Bloomberg's campaign manager just told Bernie Sanders people to go fuck off. No, I'm not making this up. Here's more of Michael Bloomberg's campaign manager. Well, let's be clear. One, Bernie and his followers helped write the rules after the last convention. So we have a set of rules that were largely adopted because of complaints that Bernie had in this last election. So these are the rules he advocated for. I think the other part is it's enough that Trump had a band of folks who are intimidating people from the right. When it comes to Bernie followers, I don't really give a shit. The idea that somehow we would succumb because some minority is going to threaten us, it's ludicrous. We had 2 of our campaign offices defaced overnight by Bernie supporters. So, there you have it. That's the Bloomberg bumper sticker. When it comes to Bernie followers, I don't really give a shit. I don't know, maybe Bloomberg's plan will be to try and buy off Bernie supporters too. Go home to home, offer them $10,000 each. I mean, either this guy is the worst politician since Hillary Clinton, or he's not well mentally. Because if he thinks this is how they could buy their way to the nomination, sure. They could buy their way to a brokered convention, and Elizabeth Warren right now, by staying in the race, is helping them do that. But if he thinks he's then going to get Bernie Sanders supporters to swallow hard and go vote for them after they stole it from Bernie and after they basically say, I don't give a shit about Bernie Sanders supporters. I'm not joking. It would not shock me at all if Michael Bloomberg tried to literally offer Bernie Sanders supporters money to vote for him. And you want to know something? As economically desperate as a lot of these Bernie supporters are, I'm not mocking you. I know the economic hurting in our audience, in Bernie's movement. Maybe some will take it, but I think the majority wouldn't. And I think if that happens, folks, we would be very, very close to a yellow vest movement in this country. It might actually happen. Michael Bloomberg I think Donald Trump is awful. I think Donald Trump is racist. I think he's a misogynist. I think he's a rapist from all the evidence. I think he's an Islamophobe. I think all these things about Donald Trump. So this isn't to equate or make Bloomberg worse, better, whatever. Michael Bloomberg is everything wrong with this country, and I don't give a shit how much money he is given. Philanthropy does not paper over how you have gotten your money. It doesn't paper over your greed. It doesn't paper over the unethical things you do, like buying off politicians, like buying off organizations, like buying off think tanks. You don't get to just give money for good causes and then you're okay. Same thing goes for Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates. But this is where we're at. And that is why I think it is so critical. You know, people say, oh, but Elizabeth Warren is taking on Bloomberg, which helps Bernie. That's great, but I think Bernie could take on Bloomberg himself just fine. By Elizabeth Warren staying in the race, she has no path. There's no state that her campaign could even name that she could actually win. So by her staying in, again, all it does is take away from Bernie. That 12% could put Bernie over the top in South Carolina. That 17% would put Bernie over the top in Texas, even if it's not all of that 17%. Massachusetts, same story. She's losing now. Bernie would crush Massachusetts without her in the race. California, same story. New York, same story. So, you know, this whole let's be PC and politically correct and, you know, persist is the new slogan. Well, how about the slogan that you claim to stand for, which is progressive? We got another story. And stay tuned. I also have an interview with Shahid Buttar coming up. This is just, worth the price of admission. You know, Bernie Sanders, there were people that predicted this. Max Blumenthal, Aaron Mate, Jimmy Dore, a whole lot of people predicted. Well, once Bernie gets in the lead, they're going to try and make him a Russian puppet and a Russian asset. So as I was sick the last week, very sick to the point where I couldn't travel. I could barely get out of bed. Intelligence reports come out. Oh, Bernie is the preferred candidate of Russia. Russia's trying to help Bernie win. Bernie's the new Trump. What's the evidence? We'll tell you later. Same thing. What did this come from? The Washington Post? Russiagate, what is this now? I don't know, not 2.0, 3.0, 4.0? I said to my girlfriend, what is the evidence of this? Because there might be bots supporting Bernie Sanders, that means they're trying to elect him? Did Russia convince 73% of Latinos in Nevada to vote for Bernie Sanders? This is ridiculous madness. But the media then, MSNBC was on fire. Oh my God, Rachel Maddow's head is exploding over this. Bernie Sanders is Russia's new preferred candidate. They're trying to prop up Bernie Sanders because Putin thinks Bernie would be the weakest candidate to go up against Trump. So they're trying to artificially prop up Bernie so that he could then lose to Trump. Jesus Christ. We're living in a ridiculous alternate universe with these people. And it's all, by the way, to scare the living hell out of older voters. And make sure those older voters don't defect to the burn. And by the way, I'm not knocking. We got older people in our audience. We love you. But by and large, most of the people buying this Russiagate nonsense are older. And remember, folks, Keep signing up. Statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 a month. I'm better, but I'm still the last ounce of this bad viral cold I had is that's why I'm drinking tea. So keep signing up. Every member gets me healthy. Every new member gets me healthy. And again, Jamal and I are hitting the road tomorrow for South Carolina. So after days of this hysteria, reality comes back. U.S. intelligence briefer appears to have overstated the assessment of 2020 Russian interference. Oh, you don't say? The U.S. intelligence community's top election security officials appears to have overstated the intelligence community's formal assessment of Russian interference in the 2020 election, omitting important nuance. What's nuance? I've never heard of such a thing. During a briefing with lawmakers earlier this month, the official, Shelby Pearson, told lawmakers on the House Intelligence Committee that Russia is interfering in 2020's election with the goal of helping Trump. The intelligence community has assessed that Russia is interfering in the 2020 election, and it has separately assessed that Russia views Trump as a leader they could work with. But the U.S. does not have evidence that Russia's interference this cycle is aimed at re-electing Trump, the official said. The intelligence doesn't say that, one senior national security official told CNN. A more reasonable interpretation of the intelligence is not that they have a preference, it's a step short of that. It's more that they understand the president is someone they could work with. He's a deal maker. Pearson's characterization of Russian interference led to pointed questions from lawmakers, which officials said caused Pearson to overstep and assert that Russia has a preference for Trump to be reelected. One intelligence official said that Pearson's characterization of the intelligence was, quote, misleading, and a national security official said Pearson failed to provide the nuance needed to accurately convey the U.S. intelligence conclusions. So basically, in a nutshell, CNN, MSNBC, home of Russiagate, New York Times, Washington Post, they run with Russia's at it again. Russia's trying to interfere. Russia's trying to help Trump. Then they add a new spin on the wheel. Russia's helping Bernie. Russia's helping Bernie Sanders. And Yellow Vest America, $5. I think everyone of influence in the progressive sphere needs to make a concerted effort to call on Warren to drop out. Hashtag drop out Warren. Hey, I can only tell you what I think. What everyone else does, they do. But everyone's, up in arms because intelligence officials said to Bernie Sanders that there was, Russia was trying to help him. The Washington Post story that reported that or broke it said, well, it's not really clear how they're trying to help him, but intelligence officials said they're trying to help him. Wait, so the government, the intelligence agencies, the deep state, yes, there is a deep state, they got it wrong? Oh, they lied? Oh, they just say things and then the media reports it, even though those intelligence officers don't provide any evidence of any of it? You don't say. Bernie Sanders, honestly, let's for argument's sake say that Putin instructed his army of whatever, bots, whatever, to prop up Bernie because Putin thinks that Bernie would be a weak candidate against Trump. Let's say for argument's sake that's true. Who gives a shit? Why is this the new Cold War? Does it look like the young people at Bernie Sanders rallies are there because of Russia? Does it look like the Latinos? I'm just talking to sane, objective people. Does it look like the 73% of Nevada Latinos voted because of some Russian vodka they drank the night before? Does it look, are all of these volunteers flying into Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, from all over the United States to knock on doors for Bernie Sanders, are they doing it because of a meme they saw on Facebook that might be from a bot? This is the most ridiculous, stupid propaganda I've ever seen. And if you want to know who is really interfering in this election, Chris Matthews is interfering in this election. Joe Scarborough is interfering in this election. CNN is interfering in this election with this bullshit propaganda. Let the voters decide. I would be much happier if MSNBC stopped pretending and just said, we are the home of the Democratic Party. We are the home of Nancy Pelosi and the establishment Democrats. And we do not believe Bernie Sanders should be elected president. And as such, our coverage will reflect that. Just speak who you are. Be open and honest about it. That's fine. If they want to do that and they want to be open about who they are, that's fine. But the interference is from all of these outlets that run to Third Way and run to Rahm Emanuel and run to all of these corrupt hacks. You know, there's Rahm Emanuel is on ABC and writing. Rahm Emanuel covered up the murder, the execution of a 17-year-old black kid named Laquan McDonald in Chicago. He shouldn't be on TV. He should be in jail. That's where he should be. Chris Matthews is comparing progressive voters, hungry, impoverished, rationing insulin, to brown shirts in Germany. James Carville. I don't, hey, if you want to have people on that don't support Bernie Sanders, that's fine. This is America. We could debate it. If you're somebody that thinks tax cuts are super great, all right. If you're James Carville and, you think, oh, Bernie's a step too far, fine. You could have that opinion. But when they continue to push propaganda out there, and what I mean by propaganda, I tweeted this earlier, they put out facts that just are wrong. Rahm Emanuel goes on The View. Again, these women on The View are having on somebody that covered up the murder of a 17-year-old black man who was shot 16 times by a police officer in Chicago, Laquan McDonald. And he says, well, Bernie's a liability with independent voters. I mean, a quick Google search will show you Bernie Sanders, one of his strongest electoral performances in 2016 in Vermont, now is among independent voters. So they just have people go out there to say factually untrue things to then convince viewers who are voters not to vote for this person. So if you're going to have people on, I don't care if it's commentary. I offer my opinion, but I make sure that it's backed up by facts. And if I get facts wrong, I correct myself. That's not what you're seeing on MSNBC. So, before I play the interview with Shahid Buttar, remember, keep signing up. We are right now 60 members away, 60 from 1,600. Right now we got enough funding for South Carolina. Jen and I have to talk. We got to crunch the numbers, look at our money to make sure we have enough money for Super Tuesday. If we get to 1,600 members, we'll be in very good shape to travel either to California or Texas. That's the two states we're looking at traveling to after South Carolina. Super Tuesday has 14 states, Texas, California, Massachusetts, there's a lot, Virginia, there's a lot of states on Super Tuesday. To me, California is the most critical. Texas is very important too. But you're talking additional flights, hotels, rent-a-cars, food. We've spent a lot of money in Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, now South Carolina. We are a small startup news company. We are funded by you. So if you've been on the fence, statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 a month. So I spoke with Shahid Buttar a little bit earlier. This hasn't been edited. We'll have Colin edit it later, so this is the raw version. He is challenging Nancy Pelosi, his primary for the Democratic congressional. The primary is next week. So if he wins the primary, he'll go on to face Pelosi in the general election in San Francisco. There was a big hysteria on Twitter yesterday because Susan Sarandon, who the establishment blames for bad weather, for climate change, for if the room smells, they blame it on Susan. Good old Susan Sarandon, who I happen to love. Susan Sarandon dared tweeted out support of Shahid Buttar and that we need to get rid of Nancy Pelosi. So I decided to interview Shahid today. Again, it's a week away from his primary there. Let's take a look at the latest going on with his campaign. Jordan, delighted to be joined by Shahid Buttar, primary challenger to Speaker Nancy Pelosi, constitutional attorney, longtime activist in the San Francisco area. Thanks for joining.
Thanks so much for having me, Jordan. It's always great to be with you.
So there's a lot going on, obviously, nationally, but yesterday, the establishment apparently, Susan Sarandon is responsible for everything from climate change to Donald Trump to now, daring to support a primary challenger to Speaker Pelosi. So she was trending because she, committed the crime of tweeting out some support for you as the primary there in California approaches very quickly. So let's get into that. You are, challenging Speaker Pelosi. Obviously, it hasn't gotten much national attention outside of independent media. But why do you think there was such a just social media onslaught against Susan Sarandon, but more importantly, the idea of taking on Speaker Pelosi?
Partisan loyalty and fealty to figureheads in spite of their commitments or lack thereof to their constituents' interests. For better or worse, I think there's a whole legion of centrist Democrats, people who aren't necessarily tethered or connected to any set of principles. They're more connected to personalities. And for them, the figure of the Speaker of the House is someone in whom they have a great deal of trust, in spite of her repeated efforts to support the Trump administration's foreign policy, his trade policy, his military budgets, his concentration camps. I could go on. But they overlook her support for Trump, and they think, as she tells mainstream media sources, that she is the face of the so-called resistance, and they respond to attacks on their figurehead as attacks on their principles. Ultimately, those people, I think, the ones who are rallying behind Pelosi, the ones who are responding viciously to Susan, don't recognize that our campaign to replace Pelosi stands very much in favor of the very same ideals, the very same vision, the same values that are animating the resurgence of the Democratic Party with a new generation of leadership. And whether you see that in Medicare for all, whether you see that in the Green New Deal, whether you see that in the assertive vision to dismantle wars for profit, I think on all of these areas, we, the voices that are already in and that are auditioning to join the squad, we offer an alternative. And I think that many of the defenders of the corporate Democrats are scared of that alternative. And I'm eager ultimately to reclaim the party for working people and for future generations.
I also think it's interesting because a lot of the defense, a lot of the attacks against Susan Sarandon in the name of shielding Nancy Pelosi from a primary challenger was talking about how effective she is. And I just look at that as effective in terms of what? I give her credit. Maybe she's, made Trump a little angry at times and gotten in his head. But in the actual practice of progressive results, as far as I could tell, this new trade deal is NAFTA 2.0. It's the same thing. Barely a dent. There's a lot of symbolic things, but she has not passed anything in the House that would actually move the needle. And she has allowed Trump continue that blank check on the defense budget. Basically gave him whatever he want in terms of the wall and immigration. So what is it that they are talking about in terms of her being the most effective leader of the Democratic Party?
She's been very effective at getting corporate news headlines based on her theatrical resistance and photo ops. She points her finger over a table. She rips up the speech. She's been phenomenally successful, just like President Trump, in getting cameras and press attention, ultimately for vacuous commitments that don't do much to move forward the interests of her constituents. I do want to press back on the premise just to one extent. The House did recently pass the Protecting Right to Organize Act. It's the signature demand of the labor movement. Nancy Pelosi opposed the bill until 2 weeks ago, when forced by pressure from labor leaders and by our campaign, she brought the bill to the House floor, she supported it, and it passed the House. And it would do wonders if it ever passes the Senate to restore the rights of organized labor. It's revealing to me both that Speaker Pelosi refused to back the bill until 2 weeks ago, and that she changed 2 weeks ago to favor the bill. I see it as a reflection of the momentum that our campaign is gaining, the blood that we've been able to draw from Pelosi and her campaign on these issues where she's been unwilling to show up for the interests of her constituents and her base. And I just draw that bill, the Congressional War Powers resolution that she moved on after failing to back the Ro Khanna, Bernie Sanders, Barbara Lee proposed amendments to the NDAA. There's a couple of areas where I've seen, particularly war powers and labor rights, where I've seen Pelosi shift from a longstanding, unapologetic, pro-corporate, anti-worker position to embrace a more progressive position in the face of a assertive, well-resourced, effective primary challenge. And I'm eager to continue forcing her to the left until I force her out of her seat.
And it also, you know, when you look at what's going on nationally, we're 2 days since the Nevada, just commanding victory of Senator Sanders. It seems to me the Democratic Party, they're huffing and puffing both at Bernie Sanders and to progressive challengers like you, that you are out of step from the country. But the results are showing they are out of step. Sure, just 3 states, Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada. Every one of them, the majority of voters said they were for Medicare for all, for example. They're not specifically the Green New Deal, but are very concerned. Climate change is the number 2 issue in all of these states, all of these polls. So why is it, you know, she has mocked the Green New Deal. She has said, well, I'm not for Medicare for all. Obamacare is different. Obviously, that's out of step with San Franciscans. It's also out of step with the people voting nationally, too.
Right. In fact, I don't think there's anywhere in the country that validates the centrist perspective. Their claim, and I'll try to explain where they're coming from, and I also will note that it is internally inconsistent. Let's just explain it. The centrists would suggest that if we embrace too visionary an agenda, we will lose the Midwest and the South, because those are places that, you know, people don't need doctors and nobody cares about climate chaos. And the hole in the bucket, of course, is that people in Indiana and Alabama need doctors and nurses and medicine as much as people on the coasts. Medicare for all and the Green New Deal, those are positions and visions that will win the Midwest and the South, even where corporate Democrats have been unable to secure victories. There have been examples of races, I think, particularly, notwithstanding some of her recent votes, but Lucy McBath taking the seat that John Ossoff couldn't in Georgia indicates that a more left-leaning, unapologetically progressive vision can win even seats where centrist corporate moderation can't. And what that suggests is that the centrist vision, Pelosi's vision, the leadership's vision of the squad and the future's voice being untenable in the middle of the country, their view is based basically on a 1980s America that simply doesn't exist anymore. Ever since 2008, the centrists and the neoliberals overplayed their hand. They so shafted working people and forced young people in particular to bear so great a burden flowing from the 2008 financial crisis that an entire generation has grown radicalized. And the very same landscape that centrists envision from their years in the 80s and the 90s, it's not the same landscape as the contemporary United States. And with the generation of millennials and Zoomers showing up as the most progressive generations our country's ever seen, they already outnumber the boomers. The election, for all intents and purposes, Pelosi has already lost it. They don't know it yet. It'll take another 8 months to prove it. I'm looking forward to the primary election next week to sort of show our split time, get in the general election, and then I have 8 months to win it.
Let's get to that. So primaries next week. What are you seeing on the ground? Because, I mean, you're not doing anything different than you haven't been doing for the last decade or two. You're knocking on doors, activism. What's the energy like there? What do you expect to, I believe it's a top 2 candidates or something like that in the primary. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, a ton of support. I can't leave the house without a dozen people telling me they're going to vote for me. I was out this morning meeting voters, identified about a dozen more just standing outside at a transit stop for about an hour. We're getting a ton of support in tons of different ways. We had about 100 people hitting the street between Saturday and Sunday this weekend. You mentioned Susan shouting us out online. It wasn't the first time. I think we've picked up a few thousand followers online in the last 24 hours. I've seen more people, frankly, than I can count, particularly in the wake of Chesa Boudin's election and Dean Preston's election last November, saying to me, "You're next." And my response to that is, it's not me, it's us. We are next. But we, the people of San Francisco, we will not be denied. We're seeing support from parts of the city I hadn't gotten the same amount of support in the last cycle. I see it in the fundraising numbers. I see it in the traffic to the website. I see it in the remarkable turnout to our mobilizations. I see it in the people that, stop on their way to the train and say, "Oh my God, I'm so excited about your campaign. I just voted for you," or "I'm voting for you," or "How can I volunteer?" I got that a bunch this morning. We're getting that every day. I particularly see two things that I think observers from afar might not realize. One, Nancy Pelosi's re-election campaign, for the first time in 30 years, is actually running a local campaign. She was out today in Chinatown meeting voters. They're running paid Facebook ads. They're text banking voters. She's never done any of this before. And the only reason the Pelosi's are doing that is because they know that their position is threatened. I don't have polling data to indicate empirically the remarkable progress that we've made securing support from my neighbors, but I know the Pelosi's have resources for polling, and I know that they wouldn't be taking the steps they're taking if the polls indicated that their position was secure. So I have that indirect reflection of our current results, and I'm very confident that over the next 8 months, our support is only going to continue to grow, particularly as people come to understand the fuller scope of the speaker's influence and recognizing how she, despite the mainstream media depiction, has done so much to empower this criminal administration, so much to suppress a progressive agenda, and so much, unfortunately, to defend our failed past in the face of a visionary future poised to displace it and replace it.
And lastly, do you see or feel any kind of any connection to what's going on nationally with Bernie Sanders? Obviously, you're running a congressional campaign, but just that kind of it's almost like in 2016, like the hibernated bear woke up, and now the bear has come with a more well-organized army.
Yeah.
Are you feeling in your race not just that energy, but almost like, wow, we actually could win this time? Because obviously Bernie's campaign went from kind of a David versus Goliath in 2016 to a more professional, well-organized. Are you feeling that there's kind of down ballot energy and connectivity to that?
Absolutely. Bernie spoke in Richmond, California, just across the Bay Bridge on Monday of last week. And I went there with a handful of volunteers. We recruited 200 volunteers in a day.
Wow.
For our campaign, which is bizarre, right? I mean, most congressional campaigns challenging an entrenched incumbent, you might be lucky to recruit 200 volunteers over the life of the campaign. And that happened in one day, right? So I felt like at Bernie's crowds, and I've done this more than once, sort of like a tuna fisherman, I'm just like walking through the crowd with a drag net, hopefully with dolphin release nets, right? We're not coercing anyone here, but we've gotten a ton of support from his supporters, not only in person, but online. One gloss here to introduce. To this point in California, the presidential primary has been very much the story, and that is at the top of the ballot on Super Tuesday. After we choose Bernie as the nominee, certainly in California, and I'm confident he will gain the nomination given the vast support and vastly greater support for his campaign than the others around the country. When we look to the general election phase, Bernie's vote in California will be quite secure. He'll be the nominee. California is among the bluest states in the country. All of the people, and there are hundreds here, who are volunteering not with us, but with Bernie, they're going to be with us, not just voting with us, but pounding pavement. I spent a lot of time at Bernie's office. I'm one of the volunteers on his campaign. Had a chance to perform in his office at different events. Saw and met a bunch of people who've rolled through there, including several of his surrogates. And every time I'm in his office, his volunteers are saying to me, "I'm with you in April. I'm with you in May. I'm with you in June." And I understand it. And I say to every one of them, "Stay here now. Bernie needs you, and we need Bernie. Get Bernie at the top of the ticket." But once Bernie's at the top of the ticket and his supporters are with us, Pelosi's done. She can't muster anything like the volunteer base, even that we have mobilized already, let alone with the added influx of Bernie's volunteers. And she's done so much to empower the Trump administration. I've even said, in fact, publicly, that it feels like she's campaigning on my behalf. And between the hundreds of volunteers who are pounding pavement for us, the profound policy opportunities that Pelosi creates by refusing to show up for the district's needs, I have a great deal of confidence that between the ground game and the air game, that she is already confronting a challenge the likes of which she's never seen. And I think ultimately we'll be poised in November to end her career.
Well, look forward to following your campaign and definitely seeing the results on Super Tuesday for your primary. Where could people find out more about the campaign?
Thanks, Jordan. Folks can check us out at shahidforchange.us or on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at Shahid for Change.
Great.
YouTube
Thanks,
as well, at Shahid for Change. Thank you. It's always great to be with you, brother.
All right. Take care.
You too.
All right.
Right on.
Try to play that. So that was Shahid Buttar challenging Nancy Pelosi there in San Francisco. The primary is next week, so we will keep in touch. I've interviewed him several times. Hopefully, can interview him when it is the general election. Him first, Pelosi. To tell you the truth, as much as Status Coup loves covering the presidential campaign, for those of you that remember when I was at the Young Turks, we love covering local campaigns too. I remember going down in 2016 to South Florida and covering Tim Canova versus Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I think a week or two before the election. Obviously, we know how it turned out. But I think it's important to have media and independent media on the ground covering local races too. Obviously, we can't be everywhere all the time, but if we grow our membership, we could be in a lot more places. Statuscoup.com/join. Sign up for as low as $5 a month. And before I sign off, new poll just came out. I'm heading to South Carolina tomorrow. A South Carolina NBC Marist poll. NBC Marist poll has, this is before last week's debate, Biden was up 10 points over Bernie. After last week's debate, they are tied. This is NBC News, Marist University. Biden, Bernie tied in South Carolina. I am headed there tomorrow, thanks to you. This goes exactly to what I've said. Why is Elizabeth Warren still in this race? I don't know why Tom Steyer is in this race either. Never underestimate the narcissism of a billionaire. But that 10% that Elizabeth Warren is hanging out there, that's the difference, folks. Welcome, new Status Coup member Jason.
Welcome, Jason.
We are now 59 members away. 59 members from 60. 59 members from 1,600 Status Coup members. And folks, listen, I'm all for victory parties. Jen, Jamal, you got us over the 1,500 mark while we were in Nevada. We needed to hit that 1,500 to have the funding to go to South Carolina, but we can't stop now. We got to have the same urgency. So if you're watching and you're obviously we always say this. If you don't have even $5 a month, we get it. Like if you're so tight that you don't have the $5 a month to support us, that's okay. Watch, share, like, tell your friends, spread the word. You could do things that don't cost money. But if you do have an extra $5 a month, we have plans for $10 a month, $20 a month, or $179 annually. As humbly as I could say it, we're not just talking words here. We are walking the walk. We have been all over this country with very little money and resources. We've done it through membership and a GoFundMe. We're going to add a lot more microphones to that map. Hell, one day we might even add whole new countries to that map, that graphic. But we need you. So if you've been on the fence, get off it. Statuscoup.com/join. If you're a member, go check it out. Jen just posted a new members video. We're trying our best to post new behind-the-scenes content when we're in the field. It's very hard because we're running around, working very long hours, driving to new cities, all that stuff. But do it, statuscoup.com/join, become a member for as low as $5. But I'll tell you what, you look at this poll, the story there, not only Joe Biden's just ongoing collapse, and by the way, Bernie Sanders has a town hall, I believe on CNN in 45 minutes, so I'm about to end anyway. But if you want to watch Bernie Sanders' town hall, I would venture to guess they will ask him about his comments about Castro, because that's what they really want to focus on. But it's tied right now. You have to, I mean, literally, Bernie Sanders would be in the lead without Elizabeth Warren in this race. And still, even though she has no path to the nomination, I mean, why is Elizabeth Warren, let me find it. Why is Elizabeth Warren right now the pro-Warren super PAC? Again, Warren completely flip-flopped on super PACs. Now she's fine having a super PAC. Is making an additional $3 million ad buy in Super Tuesday states. Raleigh, North Carolina, Wilmington, North Carolina, Minneapolis, Virginia, Oklahoma, California, Alabama, Tennessee, Arizona. Why? It just doesn't make sense. She's not going to win these states. She's not polling near the top in these states. Right now, she's losing in her home state. But the next few days are critical. This debate tomorrow is critical to whether Bernie can win South Carolina. Again, I think we have to redefine what win is. Obviously, people want him to win, like just win it. But to me, if Joe Biden only wins South Carolina by 5 points, to me, that is a victory for Bernie Sanders. And the media will not treat, I mean, they might try, but most media will not look at Joe Biden just a narrow victory in South Carolina as a victory. He was expected to win South Carolina by high double digits. So Bernie Sanders' performance tonight in this town hall is going to make a big deal. Bernie Sanders' performance in the Democratic debate tomorrow is going to make a big difference. So will Tom Steyer's. If you're a Bernie Sanders supporter right now, your best friend is Tom Steyer. You want Tom Steyer to do very well in that debate. You want Tom Steyer to move up in all these polls. Because if Tom Steyer moves up, let me find that poll again. Tom Steyer moving up is not, Tom Steyer moving up most likely is not taking Bernie Sanders supporters. Tom Steyer moving up is probably taking Joe Biden supporters. So Tom Steyer in this poll's at 15. If Tom Steyer could go up another 2 to 3 points, he could take that away from Joe Biden. Bernie Sanders could win. Welcome, new member Reed.
Woo! Welcome, Reed. Welcome to the community.
Woohoo! So we are now 58 members away from 1,600. As I end today, it's great to be back. Again, I don't know.
You have to read the super chat.
I have to read a super chat? Okay. Can you have Jordan read this one? PJ Coyne. Did you get my message at 11:40? Will Bernie win Warren State? Sorry, I am foreign. I can't spell Massachusetts. I was also asking any thoughts on Tulsi. I just woke up here. It was 11:43. I think Bernie will win Massachusetts. I think Elizabeth Warren, if she gets destroyed in South Carolina, which I think she's going to, I think it's a good chance she drops out before Super Tuesday, because I think that Elizabeth Warren is not going to risk the embarrassment of losing her home state. Politically, that is terrible. That's why Kamala Harris dropped out. She didn't want to lose California. So I think Elizabeth Warren, I think she's going to lose Massachusetts. I do. I think she's going to get destroyed in South Carolina, too. So to me, Elizabeth Warren, her campaign might be putting these ads in Super Tuesday states to rise her in the polls now. They are spending a lot of money on television ads in South Carolina, too. But they spent a lot of money in Nevada, and she came in a distant fourth. I don't see her doing very well in South Carolina. I just don't. But I think she will lose Massachusetts. And in terms of Tulsi Gabbard, I said it earlier, I think she should drop out now. I know that Tulsi Gabbard supporters don't like that, but I have to be consistent. If I'm going to call for Elizabeth Warren to drop out because she's blocking Bernie Sanders, I have to do that for Tulsi Gabbard. I think Tulsi Gabbard was treated unfairly by the media. I think she never got a fair shake. I do like her views on foreign policy. I think she's got a lot more integrity than Elizabeth Warren. I will say that. But the reality is the reality. She has no path at all. She is not going to win a state. And right now she's, even in South Carolina, if Tulsi Gabbard is, 0.4%, 0.5%, half of 1%, It's tied right now. I mean, that poll I just showed you, it's tied. NBC, Wall Street Journal, NBC, Marist. Okay, so if it's tied right now, the difference in South Carolina could be 5 to 10,000 votes. Tulsi Gabbard could get that many votes in South Carolina. She's campaigned a lot in South Carolina. So I don't know why she's still in this race. I really don't. I'm all for, pushing your message out there. But at the end of the day, same thing for Elizabeth Warren. Same thing for Elizabeth Warren. If Tulsi Gabbard is sincere about her issues, Bernie Sanders is the closest thing to you. So to me, I don't understand why she's still in this race. So yes, I think she should drop out. If you don't like me saying that, too bad. Too bad. So that's it, folks. I have to do laundry, pack, eat, headed to South Carolina tomorrow. Thank you to Jen, who not only filled in for me, but kicked some motherfucking ass. In Nevada. And I said to Jen, and I said to Anat, I mean, I'll just get sick and Jen could take it from here for all, I'm happy to retire early if Jen wants to keep traveling and doing this because she does a great job. I thought she was great out there. Really, really did an amazing job. So, and Jen and I are already talking about her doing some more states. So we're going to be a double, a deadly combo this campaign trail. You're going to be seeing a lot more of Jen out there on the campaign trail. So thank you for watching. Glad to be back today. Thank you for our new members. You could sign up all day long. You don't have to just sign up while I'm live. You could sign up when we go. Statuscoup.com/join. Flying tomorrow. Jen will be doing some video. She's flying tomorrow too. So probably no new videos tomorrow, but we will keep you up to date. Remember, sign up for our email list so you know when we're going live. If you already signed up for our email list, make sure we're not going into your spam. So check your spam folder. Make sure we are not in your spam folder. You could sign up for our email list by going to statuscoup.com. You'll see a little section, sign up. Also, sign up for our text list. Text COUP to 474747. That's COUP to 474747. And follow us on Instagram. That's Instagram.com/statuscoup. Instagram.com/statuscoup. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in South Carolina. Peace out.